It is August the 2nd, 1984. We are in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and we are talking to Mrs. Pearl Lang. Mrs. Lang, could you tell us where and when you were born?
I was born in Lodz, Poland. The date is April the 10th, 1923, and my maiden name is Wiesenfeld.
In order to understand the immensity of the crime that befell the Jewish people all over Europe during the Second World War years, we would like to find out a little bit about the pre-war years, your childhood, your family. Could you please tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, I came from a family of 6. We were 4 girls and 2 boys. My immediate family was my father and mother, and I had 1 grandma. And my father's name was Abraham Wiesenfeld, and my mother's name was Leah. My oldest sister was Hela, Israel, Chaim, and then I came, and then it was my 2 little sisters. One was Rochelle, and one was Esther. The ages, my oldest sister was 20, then I had a brother from 18, and then I was 16 when the war came. I had a brother 14, and my little sister was 10, and my baby sister was 8. We lived in Poland, and my father had a little factory, a little weaving factory from 10 machines. We lived comfortable. After the school, it was almost run by the family. After the school, we would come home and run work. But we had a very loving home. The whole life for my father and mother was surrounded about the children. I come from a very Orthodox home, very believing in God and in the Bible. We were taught from little children that whatever we get in life, God gives us to share it with others. And we were all school children yet. My brothers went to a religious school, a yeshiva, and really I could recall those beautiful holidays, what we had together, the white tablecloths and the candles and the prayers. And we may have not have too much material things, because Poland was a country where we didn't have too much. If you could have support your family and feed them and buy them some shoes, this was a lot. But we had a lot of other things where I miss it now very much. My parents, when the war came out, they were both 42 years old. And when I look back now, in those times when I was 16, I always thought of my parents that they are elderly people. But now, if I passed already this age, I see how young they were. And when the war came and the Germans came in to Lodz, we were 200,000 Jewish people in Lodz, and 200,000 Poles, and 200,000 of German people who lived in Poland.
In Lodz?
In Lodz. Lived in the city of Lodz. I was old enough to understand that something is happening, because the day the Germans came in, They marched in, the soldiers so sure of themselves, and the streets were crowded with people who were Germans, but we didn't know, were throwing flowers, and they were yelling, "We waited for this day so long and so long." And it was a rough life. Right away, we were not allowed to go to school. The education was taken away. And I could have stayed in the line a whole night to bring a loaf of bread. And before I was already close to this, to get my loaf of bread, and I wore a little shawl, and they shouldn't recognize me that I'm Jewish. And when I got to the window, the man who all my life I used to go buy bread from him said to me, "Your money isn't good. Get out of here." And I came home after I stayed so many hours, and I cried that I was so happy that I'm going to come home with a loaf of bread. But this didn't happen. A short while afterwards, there used to come and with the Germans formed like a group of Jewish people who, policemen who helped them. Like they came every day and they took a group of girls on a truck. They took us to work. What was our work? When they came in, they threw out the Jewish people from their apartments, and they took the apartments for the Germans. Then every day they would pick us up, a whole group, and they would take us to work, and we were brought back. And this was going on for a few weeks, till one day my mother was talking to this Juden, I forgot how you call it. Judenrat guy. And she went down with me and she cried. And she put her head on me and she gave me a kiss. And her tears were just coming down her cheeks. And I was annoyed with her, thinking, all the other people will see that, she treats me like a baby. And I kept on saying to her, "Mother, but tonight I'm going to come back." And little did I know that this was the last time I saw my mother and my whole family. Till today, if I think of this last kiss and her tears, it's just like it would happen today. And this was in 1939. I didn't come back. We were taking the whole group to a prison and threw in with all hard criminals, prostitutes, murderers. And there we were children who never slept in anybody's house, very much protected. We end up being in a prison with us, and they were using awful words, and they took away everything from us, even my hairpin, even everything what we had. And our work was there. They were bringing in big sacks of feathers, and we were separating them, the feathers, and then they were making pillows or whatever. And after a few weeks, they took us to a concentration camp, Majdanek. And this concentration camp wasn't yet built. It was the beginning. The ground was still a lot of mud, and when it was raining, you couldn't even walk. And our work was, we got big stones and a hammer, and we used to have to make little pebbles and spread them on the roads. And every night, I will never forget when we came the first time to Majdanek. And there wasn't any barracks built, but there was one big room. And we were asked to undress and put our clothes very neat, folded and aside. And we thought maybe we will get this clothes back. And afterwards, we were naked. We had to go around and around and around and around. And there was an assessment and white gloves. And a wave of his hand meant death or life. In the beginning, we really didn't know which one is for life and which one is for death. But we find it out very fast that the people who came in with family or elderly people or children were always grouped in one. And they were taken away, and we never saw them again. And in the beginning, the crematoriums weren't yet working. Then we didn't see any chimneys burning or smell burning flesh or things like that. Then we really didn't know what's happening. And every day, we didn't have where to sleep, but at night, we would just lean on one another against the wall. Whoever came early and got a spot against the wall was good. But we never got our clothes back, and when I got the striped big dress, and nothing, just a dress and a pair of wooden shoes, and I put this dress over my head, and I felt so dehumanized. I felt like I exist to being human. And like the dress would smell with that. I just can't describe the feeling of it. But right away, I put my thoughts together and I said, well, I left home my parents and my family, and I survived to see him. And I'm not going to let myself, doesn't matter what, I have to survive. And it was going on for weeks and weeks, and every day was the selection. And after a while, we saw at night those chimneys burning and coming out like black smoke, and the smoke was smelling. And I worked there for a few weeks on the fields where we planted beets, sugar beets. And as we planted, we found bones and ashes. And it didn't take too long to figure it out that the people who are taken away and we never see them again, those are the ashes of the people. It was in Majdanek, yes. I wasn't too long there. And I was taken to, again, in big military trucks, and we were closed up and we were driven to a concentration camp, Flugplatz. And this wasn't far from Lublin, the biggest city.
In that area?
In that area,
yes.
And not too far from Majdanek, too. I don't remember exactly how long we traveled.
And how did you travel from Majdanek to Flugplatz? By trucks.
By trucks.
And how many people approximately?
Oh, in this group where we traveled, probably a few hundred.
I see.
We just picked a few hundred. When the roll call, we had to get up 4 o'clock or 4:30 to stay there for a few hours. And the end of the roll call, they were counted up 100, 200, 300, and taken away. Then we were taken to this camp, Flugplatz, and there we met thousands and thousands of Jewish women who were there already. And every day, they were built a train who came into the concentration camp, and the wagons were loaded with clothes, with shoes. A wagon one day arrived, 10 or 15 wagons just with shoes, neatly tied in pairs. And in the other wagon came a wagon with blankets, or a wagon with clothes. And our job was to unload those wagons and put it like in a shed. And in those sheds, there were long tables where other people was sorting the clothes. Our job where I worked, this commando, was a very hard job because it was outside and it was in the winter and it was cold. And when you're hungry, and it happens a lot of things to me there, that one day I was marched to work in a group to our commando. Usually the same woman worked this kind of work. And I saw a Pole who I knew, a Polish, a young fella who I knew before the war. And he said to me, "Oh, my God, you are here tomorrow, and I'm going to come." They were allowed to come in and do their work and leave the evening. He said, "Tomorrow, when I come in Polish," he said, "I'm going to leave you a piece of bread in this pile near the lantern, you know, where this meant bathhouse, a bathroom, really."
Yes.
And he says, I see if I could. And I was so happy. My God, I'm going to have another piece of bread. It meant life. And sure enough, the next day, I watched him and I tried to maneuver around. I should see him coming in. And I saw him going to this pile. And just before, when I picked up a bundle, it fell out from this bundle, a little handkerchief made in a knot. And there, I didn't know what it is, and I didn't have time to look for it. And I figured, well, he was so nice, and to risk his life, I'm going to leave him that. Whatever it is, if it's a watch, they could use it or so. And I made my way to this pile of sand, and I didn't know that on a roof there were assessmen watching what the people are doing. And I heard that loud speaker screaming, "Halt!" And I didn't listen to it, and I was running, and I figured a few thousand women, I mix up with them, and you know, I get away with it.
Halt meant what? Halt
meant stay.
Stay.
Yeah, just don't move.
I see.
And sure enough, he did get me. He was running and he found me. He took me out and he brought me into an office where there was sitting a SS Führer, a woman. And he said to her, she was shachering with the Poles. It means I did business with the Poles.
I see.
And he left me there. He just brought me in, that he got me. And she was sitting down there, and she says to me, "Tomorrow you're going to be hanged. Tonight you're going to be put in a," I forgot the name, how we call this little place, where you stand up a whole night. And tomorrow morning, when we have the countdown, you're going to be hanged. And I knew that I will be hanged. And she said to me, "Do you have some, what did you want to give the Pole?" I said, "You know, when I picked up a bundle, this what fell out, and I put it in my stockings, and I didn't want to give it to him, but I went to pick up this piece of bread." She opened it and she spread it on the desk, and there were diamonds and diamond watches, and I saw that she's getting cuckoo just looking over it. She's getting crazy. And she says to me, "Well, this what's happening, you know, you shachet with the Poles." And I said to her, "Just one thing before I die, I'm going to tell what you took from me."
Were the Germans not allowed to keep any of the possessions for themselves?
No, it had to be when we opened the packages, and we were told if we find money or gold, it went in a big coffer, in a big valise.
I see.
And this went, I don't know where it went, but they were not allowed to take it for themselves. And she wanted it so badly to have those things. She probably never saw it in her life. And sure enough, they put me in this little, was maybe, I don't know, a foot around this thing. And I was there, and I knew that it's the end. I have to die. And what it kept me the whole night through, I couldn't close my eyes because you couldn't sit down. I thought of those beautiful years where I had home with my family and my brothers and sisters, and how caring and how lovely everything was. But when daybreak came, I saw the sun coming in or so, and I thought, I'm doomed to death. Now the daybreak is coming, and this is it. And when I heard steps, the couple came in, and because she was a couple over all the women in the concentration camp.
Maybe we should clarify the name couple. Did it mean?
Yeah, she was a woman, a Jewish woman, who the Germans wanted to make their job easier. Then they probably thought they're going to get a Jewish girl, and we will trust her, and she will be able to maneuver and bring him the things, and they don't have to do the dirty job, but those Jewish girls have to do. And maybe to hurt him too, because when this girl came in, she said to me, I was told that I have to give you 25 lashes. She says, but why should I hate you? You wanted a piece of bread. She says, that's mine. I can't do it, she says, but I have to. You scream as loud as you could. And maybe, this Lagerführer will decide that maybe you get something less. And I was thankful that my life was spared, and I just going to get the lashes. And I was asked to pick up my dress and lay down flat on 2 chairs. And she was hitting, and she was counting, and I couldn't bring out a scream out of my body, because after a while, your body gets so numb that you can't feel any pain. And this Lagerführer said to her, she's so brave and she's not yelling. She has enough. And I think I had 15 or 16 lashes.
Lagerführer being the chief of the camp?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, this was the lady who took the jewelry from me.
See.
She was a lady who took, she was not yet the main, but she was some rank she had. Well, we didn't, we weren't introduced to them to know what kind of ranks there are. But she had a lot to say in it. And I felt, well, I was spared again with my life, and hoping, always hoping that I want to live, and I will live. I will live maybe to tell. And I hope that somebody of my family will live through too. And I think that this concentration camp, I was the longest, and I had the most beating I got there. Then the next time passed a few weeks, and we worked very hard, and I got sick, I got typhus. And the girls, one friend of mine changed with me. She used to work to sort the clothes. She said, I'm going to go out to work outside, and you come and sort the clothes. Then in the morning when I came in, I was burning with fever. They would put some coats on the floor, because the floor were made of stone, and they covered me up with a lot of clothes, and I was laying there till we went home, and they were literally carrying me by my hands. And without any help, without any water to drink, somehow I survived. I was young, I was strong, and my will to life was very strong. And I believed in God. Then it happened one day. It was on a Sunday, and it used to be that Sunday was the day of rest. And we went out to the appel, to the roll call, and we stayed for hours. And then one assessment came, and he said he needs 10 girls to unload a wagon with shoes. And it was cold, and I figured, well, if I work, I warm up, and I volunteered. And 2 girls, we had those barley sacks, 2 girls loading a sack of shoes, and we carried both to a shed. And we took out the shoes, and we went back, and we took another one. It was already towards the end, and it started to be dark. This assessment, his name was Winkler, and he was very well known that he killed a few girls. He was, just maybe 2 weeks ago, he had killed a girl who I knew very well. She was from Warsaw, and she slept not far from me. He called me and he says, "You committed sabotage. You took a sack of shoes and you threw it in the lantern. Our lantern were built like in a round. And then one time they could have go in 100 people. You know, there was board, was a round thing built like a circle, and there was a board around."
Yes.
And he says, "You know, for committing sabotage, you have to die." And when I start to say to him, "I didn't do it," he says, "You are a Jew, and Jews don't have any voice." He took me into the same shed. He let the other girls go. He took me into the self-shed where we unload those shoes. He says, "Lift up your coat." And he started to beat me. I looked at him in the beginning. I could have seen him, and around his mouth there was how would you say, a sham?
Yeah, foam.
Like a foam.
Yes.
All around his mouth, and he was like a wild man. And he beat me, and I was unconscious. I didn't know the end, what's happened. But in a few hours, I came to myself, and I tried to move my body, still have unconscious, not remembering what had happened. I wanted till I came to myself. I felt that I can't move. Then I slid out, and in front of this this shed, there was a lot of snow and ice. And I lay down there, and I was laying for quite a while, where I always say that this snow and ice saved my life, because after being a few hours on it, I was able to wiggle, and on all my fours, I don't know how many hours it took me, I crawled in the barrack. And when the girls who knew me saw me coming in, the screams and the love and the laughter and the joy in a time like that, they thought for sure that he killed me. And there I felt I was still spared with my life. In the same concentration camp, I unloaded once a wagon, and I pulled out a feather blanket, and there it fell out a human head, a man's human head, and I start to yell, and that's all what I heard is wild laughter. It was so hard to live, but somehow we didn't look ahead of us. That's the only way we were able to live, is from hour to hour. In this concentration camp, when it came night, we had a big barrack because there were 5 bunks. At the end of the barracks, there were big wooden buckets, and at night when we need to go, you had to go to those buckets. And there were a group of people, what they called them the Scheisse Kommando, and they used to get maybe additional little piece of bread. And when the buckets were already full and finally you crawled down and you had the diarrhea and you burned out with fever and you wanted to go, they didn't let you, they hit you because the buckets were full. And it may be, I don't know, I remember times where I thought it's the worst thing in life what could happen if you need to go and you don't have where. In the morning, sometimes I got up and I saw people this camp was surrounded with electric wires, and I saw girls laying near on the floor near the wires, and I envied them. I thought, my God, they're not going to be beaten anymore, and it's no then peace. And I wanted so badly to do that, but somehow I think our bringing up, I believed that God gives life and He is the only one who has a right to take it away.
I see.
Would take long time to tell all the awful things. In this concentration camp, there was a lot of hanging. Where every day almost we came home and there was 2 girls hanged, 3 girls hanged, and they had just like narrow gallows between the barracks, and we would tell that's the roll call and we have to look straight, and they put this rope around their neck and they would say to them, you could have a wish. Then I remember a girl who was hanged said she wanted bread to die, not being hungry. Really, this was my longest time I spent in Flugplatz.
And from Flugplatz, you were taken where?
One night, I came home and went early to bed, earlier than somebody else. And as I fell asleep, I dreamt that I saw my father in my sleep, and he said to me, listen, you run away from here for any cost. You run away. I was in sweat, but when I got up when we were called for the roll call, I said, all right, my father said, you run away. And I remembered, the girls who were with me, we slept in one bunk, 6 of us, when we had to turn. Everybody had to turn when one had to turn. And when we stayed at the roll call, and just this next day, they came to take some people to Majdanek, because this was the only crematoriums in this area. And when they said they need 40 girls, I stepped out. And this black couple came over to me, and in Polish she said to me, "You know where those girls are going. What you doing? Get in." And she, in front of the assessment, to make it nice, she hit me. She said in Polish I should go in back in the line. But somehow, like something would push me, and I didn't. And we were counted 40 girls more, and put in a truck, and we stayed near the entrance, and a whole day we weren't fed, and we didn't have anything to drink. And the girls marched down towards the evening, and they pitied us, and they knew that this is probably we're not going to be alive the same evening. But the way it turned out, that we were sure that we are taking to Majdanek. And we passed by Majdanek, and I come from a religious home, and I knew my prayers. And I guess like any other religion, we have a prayer before that. We call it a vida, the vida. And I leaded the group, and we all sat, and we huddled to each other, and we passed by Majdanek. Maybe not so happy. We thought, well, now even the gas is too much for us. They will take us someplace in the woods, and we will be killed. But as the luck was with us, they took us, the 40 girls, to a marmalade factory in Milejev, a small town where we used to, the people from this little town worked there, and it was very good for us because we got an apple, and we got a carrot, and the people from town were very nice to us. They brought us, if they could smuggle in, they brought us things that we were able to eat, or a kerchief for us.
Okay. So from the terrible experiences of Flugplatz, you were taken to the marmalade factory in Milejev, where you stayed for a few weeks and where life was a little easier for you. And we thought that maybe we could stay there to the end and have a easier life. But on September the 1943, the girls from the village came in and said, from the concentration camp where you come, from Flugplatz, all the Jews got killed, and so is from Trawniki. And we were worried, and we thought, well, maybe we were forgotten and they will let us go. But the same day, a truck just rolled in, and they took us away to a concentration camp, Trawniki. It was a few thousand Jews there, from Warsaw the most, men and women together. They were brought in. And when we arrived on the way where we were sitting in this truck, and we thought, well, it was good that we lived so long, but now the time came, they weren't spared, and why would we? Then the whole way, and I was sitting in right in the edge, and I asked this, he was a Ukraine, they cooperated with the Germans, and he was a Ukraine guy, and he was wearing, how did we know? Because they were wearing black uniforms, and the Germans had a green one. And I asked him in Polish, I said, what time is it? And he said to me, it's 4 o'clock, but for you it's 5 of 12. Give us everything what you have, because when you arrive in Trawniki,
There's a man with a machine gun, and they will kill you right away. And there were 10,000 Jews killed yesterday. Well, we thought that he's lying. We wanted to believe that he's lying, that this is not true. But sure enough, as we arrived closely, we smelled the burned flesh, and as they came into the camp with a truck, they were laying dead bodies, arms, heads separate. We were taken into a barrack where there was 120 men, and they told us what's happened. That 2 days before, they dug ditches, long one, and just a day before, there came SS people, and they were asked to undress, and they shot them right in the ditches. And those men were left there to take out the bodies and to burn on a big how would you say,
bonfire?
Bonfire, like that. And the man came home, they said a prayer after that, because they recognized their mothers or fathers or loved ones, somebody from the family. And took maybe a week. Our job was we went to the fire, and people who they were hidden, and they brought them to the fire. They had to undress, and we took away the clothes from the fire. After a few weeks, when the bodies were burned, one evening they came in, and they said that they're taking away the men, 120 men, and they're going to be shot. And when they were taking out, we all cried, and we were very... And he says, don't cry and don't scream. We will be for you right back. And I could remember like it would happen today. I undressed and I put in a big coat. And I thought to myself, when I get to the fire, I don't want to be bitten by the dogs, because they were staying there with dogs if somebody didn't undress fast, to be ready. But as it happened, this assessment came back and he said, they still need us to sort the clothes from the barracks, from the dead people. And one day, as I pulled out a blanket from under the bridge, maybe my own thought, if you say that 2 million children were killed, it's just 2 and a lot of zeros. But this is a story about a bright little boy who once lived free in Warsaw with his parents. And the story what happens to him. Then as I pulled out, I heard a stir. And I thought maybe a rat or something. And to my astonishment, I saw a little child there, all cribbles, just laying around, and I picked him up, and his head fell to a side. And he couldn't, his face was shriveled, weak. And even the ruthless assessment looked at this child, and I said to him, please, could I take him to the barracks? And maybe he had children home or so. He says, well, as long as you live, you could have him. And I begged him he should take me to the barracks, because on the way, if somebody from the other SS would see me carrying a child, I would be killed, because around the camp there were those, where they sat on top.
Yeah, watchmen.
Watchmen,
yes.
Too. And he agreed with it. He walked me to the barrack, and this little boy he slept with me. He was a sick child, and took weeks till he was able to converse, and he told me that his name is Mareczek Semel. He lived in Warsaw. He arrived here with his father. His mother was killed in front of him. They came to the house, and his father was at work, and his mother hid him under a mattress. And when they got into the house, they shot her. And he was a long time, he says, with his mother while his mother was dead. He crawled out and under the mattress, and he was with her till his father came back. The little boy, he said he was 5 years old, but children in the war, their mentality was like a child from 10 or 11. And with very little help, we didn't, we were 40 of us there, very little help what we had with medication. Finally, he started to trust me, and he was beautiful. He was a blonde little boy with big blue eyes who they spoke. You could have read his mind when you looked at him. And day after day, we took those barracks apart, and it meant life. If one barrack was taken apart, we said to each other, this is life. This is a day of life. And if we had to go to the bathroom, we had to go 10 of us in one time, because the assessment went with us, and he stayed outside, and we had all to come together back, and we were watched. There were always somebody in front of this barrack. And finally, when I came home, this little boy was staying there and greeting me with kisses and hugs. And I had somebody to live for. I dreamt, I planned that someday, if I'm going to be free, this child, if he doesn't find anybody, he's going to be mine. And this was on April the 10th, and the girls planned a little celebration for me. They took the portion of bread what they got, and they took the little marmalade, and, just a birthday. But it wasn't too long till the assessment. We heard coming somebody, and our capo said to us, Mareczek is taken away. I didn't know what to do. I went so much through in my life, but I didn't think I would survive this one. And the little boy looked at me and said, Perelka, that's my Polish name. He said, where do they take me? And what are they going to do to me? And I quick said to him, they're going to take you to a school, and you're going to learn how to write and read. And he looked up with his bright blue eyes, and he said to me, if I'm going to learn how to write and read, my first word, it will be Perelka. They took him away from the same day, and I knew that he's not going to be alive the same day. They took him to Majdanek back. And when the soldier came back, I asked him, I said, I give you anything, just tell me, where did you take this child? And he told us that he took it to Majdanek, to the crematorium. At the time, yet before they took him away, our capo came in and she said, and just came an order and we all going to be shot. And I looked at this little boy, and I had, there were money and diamonds and things, but you couldn't buy a piece of bread for it. Then it was lay around all. And when she said that we all going to be shot, I wanted to save Mareczek's life. Then I went to this Wachman, to this assessment who guarded us, and I said, here it is, save his life. Just let him out through the gate, and let him go wherever he wants. And I figured, such a nice-looking child, somebody would pick him up. But he beat me with his rifle, and Maretic, and I ran together with the other ones. And I heard far away still, he yelled, "Perelka, where do you leave me? Take me with you." But there was no way back. And as we stayed in line, doomed for that, the only way I could survive is to think of the past. And I wanted so badly to live. I felt like I owned to them. I owned to be, I want to tell. Otherwise it would be in vain. And as we were in the line, she came in and she said, "Well, they need us still to take apart those in those barracks." And to our estimation, as the front came closer, they took us from there back to Majdanek. We were 42 because 2 of the girls we found one day as we were taking a barrack apart. A little note came through a hole to the floor, and it said, "We are 2 women hiding here, and could you help us to bring some food?" It was very hard for us because when we went to the bathroom, we were guarded. When we went to work, we were guarded. But we smuggled in and we left him there something, and at night they used to go out. And finally they caught him. Then we were already 42 of us. They took us back to Majdanek. And when we came back there was 500 women. A short time we were there, and we didn't do anything. We didn't work, but at night we heard shooting. And we figured out the war must come to the end. After a few weeks, they took all 500 of us. They gave us a bread, a blanket, and all the soldiers, there was Wehrmacht and there was SS, they took us for a march. And the first 3 days, we marched day and night. It was raining like usually, and they wanted to make shortcuts. We went through water, through little rivers, and when we looked back, the town like Lublin was on fire. We knew that this is really the end of the war. It was already probably in 44.
So you could see the city of Lublin on fire, and you most probably knew that the Soviet army.
Well, we didn't know what kind of army it is, but we heard shooting, and we knew that that the war, there is fighting, and when it's fighting, maybe it's going to be the end of the war. I see. They took us from there from Majdanek, and we walked for weeks. And on the way, from the 500, we dwindled down maybe to 150. And it was awful. On the way, if somebody couldn't walk, they would leave the dogs to finish him off. People had to, as we walked through the waters, our wooden shoe you would lose, and they had blisters on their feet. A lot of things, and they would put us to the train, and when the train was bombed, the soldiers would run to the field, and we were in the train. They closed the doors, and we were in the train. And we were welcoming. Many times I thought I'd rather be dead through a bomb, that they should have the satisfaction they killed another Jew. But as luck wanted, we arrived, a small group, to Auschwitz. And open wagons and open trains, like a platform.
Yeah.
And on the way, we want fat or a drink. We lived on grass and leaves, whatever we could when they stopped already with us to rest. when we arrived in Auschwitz, we went through Birkenau. As we went and we clutched to each other with our hands. We smelled, again, stenches from burned body. By now we knew it very well, what it is. And, well, we thought, we didn't know so much, where we're coming or what's going to. And when we came, it was at night, it was darkening. We were taken into a room and we asked to undress. And they kept us there a whole night naked. Yeah. And when the morning came, we were shaved our heads again, and we were taking the number, giving the number. Do you want me to give the number?
Yes, and you were then tattooed.
Tattooed to get a number. And between ourselves, we knew that we felt that it's close to the end, but we were told, or I don't know if we figured out ourselves, that the people who will have the number will never survive, because we will be witnesses to tell. And as much, when I was given my number, as much I went through whipping and beating, it didn't hurt me so much. Then I became a number. They took my name away. It hurted me so much. I used to lay in those dark hours and I used to repeat to myself, they just changed it, but I know my name, and this is going to be this till the last minute. I have a name. Then in the morning afterwards, they took us in and we are getting a shower. And we kind of knew already what the showers, we were told, people talked about it, at those showers, I guess, and then we will go to the crematorium. But we went in and we were showered and water came out. And when we came out, we were still alive. And the hair was down, and a woman without a hair, it looked awful. We didn't even recognize each other. And those striped outfits. I was in Auschwitz a few months, and we went every day to work. Our job, we had like a commander, a group of women that took us out every day out of the camp, and we were cutting squares of grass, and we brought it into the camp, and we had to put it on the little hills to make the camp looking nice. Many things happened there, awful things. Many of the girls were beaten to death. We had to bring him in back, and it was hot, and we had to drag him. Just somebody who you walked out alive to bring that is just like a piece of rag. Not even, I guess we had to feel that this wasn't a human. Otherwise, you never could have, you couldn't have do it. And he took 5 of us. And of course, I was so lucky, whether somebody had to be beaten or punished, I was between them. And we should kneel down. There were little pebbles in the sides, on the pebbles, with our knees. And whoever moved were beaten and kicked. But we survived that too. If they wouldn't have killed, mass murdered so many Jews, a lot would have survived all the hardship. We saw every day there was a hospital, a revere. In the middle of the night, you heard screams. They emptied out the revere. And we knew that those people were killed in the same time. And there were again selections, and you had to keep yourself clean, not to have anything on the body, because if you when there was a selection and you had something on your body, a boil or something, you were the first one to go. Then they had in Auschwitz those long, like a long things, and there were a lot of faucets on it, and you put your bag on it with, of course, soap we didn't have and a towel we didn't have, but we thought this will keep us for now, keeping boils. A friend of mine, a very close friend, who lived through the war too, one day she signed her name. She wanted to, they were asked, they needed a few women, and she signed the name, and then I find out that this group is going to go for experiments. Then I went to this revere, and I bribed a girl who worked there, gave her for 4 weeks 1 portion bread every day. She should take her in and keep her over the next morning. And she did, but we kept our word, and we gave her the portion of bread, and she came out. But the other girls we never saw again.
These were medical experiments that people were taken for.
Yeah, and after the war, really we didn't know. We heard, but after the war we find out to somebody that this group really went for experiments, and none of them survived.
I see. When you talk about selections in the camp of Auschwitz, could you describe them in more detail? Where were they taking place? And
usually they were taken care in the square, when the things were built, or on the ramp. We saw coming in transports from any other, city or country. Sometimes we didn't understood. They had the selection right on the ramp. And I could pick out Mengele between hundreds. Those faces you never forget. I will go a little bit faster because I do want to tell you something. From Auschwitz, I was taken to a concentration camp, Bergen-Belsen, and there was thousands of women who the Germans used to come and take out for work. And we were half dead, but the one who was stronger were picked. Then, if you want to believe in fate, I went out early in the morning and I found a piece of gray paper. And we were the 40 of us, we kept together. And I said, you know what? We used to say, if the salesman will come to buy the cattle, we will take this great paper when we go out to the roll call. We're going to make ourselves red cheeks. And sure enough, we were picked. They took us to a factory in Aschersleben. This was an aeroplane factory. We worked hard. The Germans were civilians, and I was working at the little windows where you throw out the bombs. We were putting it together with big bores and little needs. I don't know how you say it in English. He was a German, but he was nice. He used to come. He liked my work, and he used to tell me how much they used to pay the civilian to work at it. And one day in my box, every worker had a box with a name. I found 2 thin pieces of bread with lots of butter and meat in it. And I was very mistrustful. And I thought maybe it's just, he put it in and then he will say I stole it or something. And I didn't. And he didn't remove it, but every day he brought me, and he couldn't say to me, I left there for you. Because if I would be caught, and he would be caught, and I would say he left it for me. I mean, he risked his life. I should have this piece of bread. And I shared it with my girlfriend, but kept me alive. But when the war was closer, he said one day to me, I wonder if you would do for me what I did for you if we lose the war. And I kind of left, I lost the faith because I thought he does it for me to keep me alive. But if he had in mind, if he wanted to help me because I should help him, it was a different story. But still, who knows what would have happened if I wouldn't have the piece of bread. And the war was nearing. We were taken to a concentration camp.
So you were taken to another camp from there to
Theresienstadt. And there it was just a place where there were coming people from all over the world. They brought them in, but we didn't work. There wasn't any crematoriums, and they didn't kill us. They didn't shoot us. They just kept us there. And May the 8th, in 45, we were liberated from there. We were liberated through the Russian, and I never forget the day when the tank rolled in the concentration camp, and we all jumped on those fellows, and we kissed them, and we danced around the tank, and finally we are free. Then we find out fast that the camp was closed. We are free, but we can't go out because people had typhus was going on in the camp, and a lot of people were dying. And we are free, but what are we going to do now with our life? We decided we're going to go home because maybe somebody from my family are still alive. But now from the old journey all around, there were 10 of us who survived all those on the way where we lost so many. And we are free, and we're going to leave the camp together. But there was no way to leave because they were quarantined and we couldn't go out. And the guy who I'm married now, well, we find out that maybe a mile away there is a camp where Jewish men are there. And we never believed that, Jewish men are still alive. And we all ran. And as we came there, we find out that the cellar of potatoes were open, and we could steal some potatoes. And I slid through a little window, and when I came in, I saw those big piles of potatoes, and my God, they looked like diamonds. They looked like normal time, the best what you could see in the world. And I wanted to take those potatoes and bring up to the other girls, and there I didn't have where to take them. And I had a slip. I took it off and I tied it down, and I put the potatoes. Meanwhile, a guy came over and he said, "From where are you?" And I told him, and "From where are you?" He told me from where. One of those girls lived in a little town near his town, and the way it turned out, it was related to him. And he said to us, he's going to take it out. He was already an interpreter for the Russians. But we had decided between ourselves that we're going to leave all together. And he was able to make us papers and leave the camp. And the Czech people were very nice. They are wonderful people. On the way, we were able to go on trains, and they didn't charge us. And when we knocked on a farmer's door, and he had a full table of children, he will ask his children to get up and feed us and let us wash and give us soap, and just wonderful people. And they had very little for themselves. They had an awful hard time from the Germans. And finally, we were on the way to go home. When we arrived, Lodz, the city where I was born and raised, and I realized I am free now. But I was worse off than I was in camp. Then in camp, I fought for the days to live. Here I came back. We stayed a whole night on the train where you arrived, on the terminal, because we didn't have where to go. And in the morning, we find out that where there is a committee, like a place where you're able to go in, register from where you come and who you are, and when you stay in the line, you get a plate of soup. We went there, and I looked all over the books and the walls, and I didn't find our name, nobody who I knew from before the war. And I registered myself and put on every concentration camp there was, and sick mentally, physically. Nobody was waiting for me. No place to go, without education proper, without money, without trust in people, because all through the years I never blamed God for things what's happened, because I always believed that God gave us a brain and we could choose good and evil. But now here I am, no place to go, very bitter on the whole world, and especially on the Jewish faith. I thought I hate everything what's Jewish. And I was raised in such a religious home. Look what happened to my parents. It wasn't good enough for God, the way my parents lived. They had to die when they were 42. I didn't know what to do. I even thought sometimes maybe that would have been already better than to live. Very bitter. But I decided I'm not going to stay in the line for soup, and I went to work. I knocked on a door from a factory, and the guy opened the door, and he saw this wretched kid there, you know. And he said, "What do you want?" I said, "I would like to work." He said, "What could you do?" I said, "Anything." He set me down by a machine, and European people, everybody knows how to sew and how to. Then I worked a day, and he was so nice. He was a non-Jewish man. I asked him that if I could get paid for the day. He gave me more for a month, probably more than I would have deserved for a month. And I said, "All this money," he said, "you deserve it, you worked for it." And my God, I earned some money. I ran on the way. I bought a piece of salami and some bread to the other 3 girls who were there. Where did we live? We looked in bombed houses. And Lodz was quite bombed. And we cleaned away a room, and we brought a door from another house, and we had this black blanket too. And there we stayed, and when I came up, and we ate, and it was bothering me. I just didn't know. I questioned God. There I came to where I was very bitter on God. And I didn't trust. I didn't trust my own shadow. I didn't trust people. And one day I decided I'm going to go to the ghetto. I wasn't in Lodz ghetto because I was taken away before. And on a little door I saw in Jewish a little sign where it says a rabbi. And I figured, my God, I'm going to give it to him. Whatever I feel, he and his religion and whatever. Knock on the door, and a lady opens the door, and kids are running around half naked there. And she puts out her head and she says, "Come in, my child." And when she said "my child," it came all my life back. And I went in and she said, "What would you hungry?" I said, "No, I want to speak to the rabbi." He took me into his room and the air was rinsed. He had those big books. And he said, "Who are you? And who was your father and your grandfather?" Sure enough, he knew my family. And I said, "I just came to you I don't have to whom to talk." You know, there wasn't psychiatrists. We didn't have where to turn. I didn't have to whom to talk. I said, "I just came to tell you how I feel." And I told him I feel, I hate everything that's Jewish. And I don't belong to anybody, and nobody belongs to me, and I'm just a free person, and I could even stay on the corner, and I don't have to be ashamed for anybody. And he looked at me, and he looked at me, and he said, "What do you mean you don't belong to anybody, and nobody belongs to you? You think your parents, even they weren't in their body with you, but they were in the soul, and they always look down for you. And what do you mean? God is with you." And he said, "You know what, my child? You have a right to complain. You have a right to ask God a lot of questions. And you have a lot. And this was the first time after the war where somebody said to me, 'You have a right.' Because all the years I was in camp, if you're a Jew, you didn't have any right. You don't have a right even to have your name." I left there with mixed emotions. I still didn't have where to go, but I told a lot of it. And how am I going on to live? And I decided that my past life, it's very important to me, that this is a part of me. It's not mine to choose, even if I don't want it. This is a part of me. And then my husband came back, and he told me that a girl who we thought she's dead, where they lived in this small town, Trawniki. I came there and I stayed with my friend, and this is the guy who I married. Still was in 45.
45.
Yeah, I got married because 10 months later my daughter was born. And when I find out that I'm pregnant, I didn't want to have a child in Russia because to me they weren't too much better than the Germans. And I wanted to leave, and the only way we could leave is we could smuggle through the border. I came to the United States, and we found an uncle. My husband found an uncle who he remembered that he used to write letters. And this uncle, I wanted to go to Israel because this is the last corner in the world where Jews should be, or if there is not good, this is it. But this uncle insisted that, the United States helps the whole world, and Israel can help themselves. And he promised us that if we still want to go to Israel, he's going to make it possible for us. And we came to the United States. My daughter was still born in Germany, and I came with a little girl from 3 years old. And when we came to the United States, I discovered that my children could go to any school that they choose. They could make for themselves whatever they want to with hard work. They don't have to go barefooted. They don't have to be hungry. And just a land, Even I wanted to go to Israel, and it was deep in my heart. It was a wonderful world. It was a wonderful country. And if you worked, you got places, you could have dress, you could give charity, you could share. It was just wonderful. And I had another child, a son, and then I had another son. I had 3 children.
And what city did you settle in the United States?
I came to New York, and from New York, we lived maybe a year and a half. We moved to Washington, D.C., and in a year, must have been maybe 73, I got a phone call from the German embassy that they want me to come. And I went there, and they said to me, you know, we have a few assessments. We brought a book from 800 pictures, and those people were in the camps where you were. There are very few left alive. Would you sit down and look this book over? There were 800 pictures. A friend went with me and my husband, but none of them were allowed to be in the room. And I looked and I looked and I looked, and I found 6 of them in the picture.
That you remember
yes,
from the camps in
and
which you were?
even this Winkler, who beat me almost to death, who said I committed a sabotage, I recognized him too, and he was alive. Then I went home, and very heartbroken, you know. There was already so many years later, and they asked me, if you, if we would want you to come back to Germany to testify in the trial, would you come? And I was petrified to go back to Germany. I said I would let him know. I came home and we talked it over, and then with my husband, he said, you know what? You should go, because how are we going to be able to explain to our children that just to save you anxiety, you didn't go? And I kind of thought to myself, I own it. I own it to those, all my friends who would have loved to be here to say it. And they are not there. At least I should remember them. And it was following me. One face especially. It was in Flugplatz. And we were sitting a whole night to be unloused, they called it. They took our clothes, and they took it to the disinfection, and we were shaved our heads again. And there was sitting a little girl. I didn't know her name. I didn't know from where she came. And she was a dark-haired and dark skin. I think she was French. I'm not sure. I didn't know her name. And she was shivering. We all sat naked, and I went over to her, and I took her around, and I kept her close to me, and I kept her in my arms. She was a little girl, and she looked at me straight in my eyes, and she said, "You're to me like a mother." And she moved her head, and she died. In those eyes, I always call her the nameless friend, followed me. You better go. But we called Germany, and I insisted that I'm not going by myself. I want my husband to come with me. And they agreed. They paid for his coming too. I walked in there to the courtroom. Before I went, my lipstick was open, my powder case was open. There was a jury, and there were prosecutors, a whole group. I was sitting down just maybe 2 feet away, and there were sitting 5 men. And I would ask, "Do you know who this is?" And one of them was a guy from Flugplatz, and his name was Straubel. And I said, "Yes, I know this one." And he looked at me like up and down, and I could have read his mind to think, listen, why didn't I kill her too? You know, there were so many. What they had him is, when they hanged a girl, he supposedly, they wanted to know, I should testify if he was the guy who pulled the chair. I didn't know. I knew he was there. I knew he was at the hanging, but I never looked up when you pull a chair and you hang somebody. Then I was on the road, and when I went in to swear, they brought me a Bible, and I said, is it the Old Testament? And they said no. And I was so proud to say, well, I am Jewish, and if you want the truth from me, I want the Old Testament. And I speak pretty good German, and I could have, he says, oh, good, we don't have to have a translator. I said, I prefer in English, where I probably knew better German than I knew English. But I said, I prefer English, and it made me so proud. I am an American, and I prefer English. This guy, there was other four, and I asked later what the other four are doing. Those are the guys who committed a lot of crimes, but there is nobody alive who would testify for them, and they were going free. And this guy, who I testified, and I swore on the Bible, I said I was there. He was then the commander of the concentration camp. He was the one who gave the orders. I didn't see exactly who pulled the chair because I couldn't look up when you pull somebody away the chair to be hanged. Then it means I wasn't 100% witness because I didn't see pull the chair. And I gave him the other names of the girls who are still alive. But between a few of them did see pull the chair. And he got 15 years. But this was many years after the war. Meanwhile, he was on the house arrest. He walked into the court with a briefcase and two lawyers at the side. And what I object to it is I was questioned who my father was. What did he do? If he was a nice man enough, I should testify for them. You know, what did he do if he was honest? A year later, I was called again. And then I had to testify about a guy who was in Trawniki. His name was Bartechko. I went there, and all the trials were going on in Hamburg, Germany. I went back again to be a witness, already when we lived here.
You mean in Calgary?
In Calgary, 11 years ago. And when we came here, I think it was the second year. And now I'm very proud to say that God did give me the strength to be able to trust people, to forgive people, to love people. When it was for years a very big problem with me to trust people because I was raised just with awful things, and I'm thankful for it every day. God gave me 3 children, they're healthy, and I have 7 grandchildren, 6 boys, and the Queen of Sheba, the youngest. And thank God we lived in a blessed country where things are different. And I hope that there will never be a repetition, that the world will learn from the past. Otherwise, all those people had died in vain.
Thank you so much, Pearl, for sharing these harrowing experiences with us. We all have.
It's my duty. It's my duty to do that because we own it. We really own it. It's a responsibility of us to tell it and retell it. Maybe the world will learn by it.